Hello everyone and welcome back to the final chicane with me, cristinboylan. Welcome to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix weekend review. Guys, we've got a new setup, do you notice? Very similar but not the same. We have a new mirror here. We had a party like 2 weeks ago and the mirror fell off the wall and smashed. 7 years of bad luck, I heard, but you know it was a good party when the most expensive mirror in the house breaks. And I've already started talking about things that literally nobody cares about. I also have Chico beside me. For some reason, Chico also wanted to sit beside me, my little baby dog. So if you hear some mouth noises and some sniffing, that is Chico. You may be able to see him in the mirror there also. Unless you're listening, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. Anyway, on the topic of mirrors breaking and getting 7 years bad luck, I actually did have a bit of luck recently. I think I may have made a post on YouTube, but quite excitingly, the final chicane was nominated for Sports Podcast of the Year at the Independent Podcast Awards. I think there were about 7, 8 maybe podcasts nominated. There is also another Formula One one I saw that I'm pretty sure is ran by a girl or 2 girls. I didn't have time to properly look into it, but like I just think that's so exciting how 2 podcasts nominated are about Formula One, but also they're both ran by women, as well as a few other podcasts. I haven't actually looked into them properly, but it's the Independent Podcast Awards. So I'm excited to go to that. I'm pretty sure anyone can go. If you want tickets, I think you just look up Independent Podcast Awards King's Place. So yeah, I was quite happy about that. I'm sure for a lot of people that's probably like just like a little thing, blah blah blah. But you know, I put a lot of effort and time into this podcast, so even being recognized in any sort of way is always important to me, and I'm always grateful for that. So thank you guys for your continued support with that. Okay, let's start with the riddle of the week. No, it's not a riddle of the week. That was a complete lie. The final chicane brain game. That's what we call it now because it's not always a riddle of the week, and it's not a riddle of the week this week. I told you I wasn't going to do a riddle of the week last week. So I'm not going to do a riddle of the week. This week it's a fact or fiction game. F1 fact or fiction. So I'm going to tell you a fact or fiction, and you have to decide if it's a fact or fiction. Very complicated to understand, I know. So is this true or is this not true? In the entire history of Formula One, since 1950, we'll say, the Formula One Championship, a driver once won a race, crossing the line with all 4 tyres of different manufacturers. Is that true? All 4 tyres were from a different manufacturer when he crossed the line to a race that he won. Let me know if you think that is F1 fact or fiction. And I'll tell you the answer at the end of today's episode. And you only get to hear the answer if you watch the entirety of today's episode. It's law. I don't make the rules, but you will get arrested if you don't, I think. And what news do we have since last race weekend? I know Azerbaijan got renewed for a few more years. Was it 2030? Or am I thinking of last weekend? But Azerbaijan, Baku, did get renewed for a few more races. And I do like Azerbaijan. I do always enjoy the Baku Grand Prix. So that's not something that I'm disappointed about. On the topic of things getting set and stuff like that, sprint races. What is our opinion on this? Because I'm still not sure. I said last week, I like sprint races every now and again. I think I spoke about this in the last episode, but the sprint races for next year were confirmed, and then it was Stefano was saying that maybe they might be considering like reverse sprint races and stuff like that. What is your opinion on that? I do enjoy reverse sprints in F1 Academy in Formula 2, but I also think that they have such more of a purpose in those feeder series, because you're given a chance for people who may not have the qualifying speed to get up the top to really show what they can do when they're up there, like overtaking wise, defending wise, like giving a chance for those people who may not have it completely on qualifying or, you know, car wise, and giving them a chance to showcase themselves. I think, is that really necessary in Formula One? Like, it would be exciting for sure, and it would be messy, definitely. I think what a lot of people maybe were concerned about was like saying, well, obviously they're just gonna try qualify low so they can start higher in the reverse. But I think one thing for sure would be that if there was gonna be a reverse thing, it would probably be the whole thing where you start on the Sunday race. So wherever you qualify, you start in the Sunday race, and then they reverse however many positions for the Saturday race, but there's still like more points available for the Sunday race, everything like that. Like, that's what they do in Formula 2. So that wouldn't be an issue. I just think maybe that's something we could leave to like F2, the feeder series, the different sort of feeder series, and not something that we really need to take into Formula 1. Sprint races, I'm fine with. I feel like I'm sort of repeating myself from potentially the exact same thing that I said last week, but I'm okay with a couple more sprint races being added, say after 2026. But I think reverse, I would probably be on the side of there's no need right now. But you know what I love? I would just love one race weekend a year that's just like a fun race weekend, like not towards the championship, but all the drivers take part, like maybe a fundraiser weekend or something where you could do like reverse grids and, you know, like try out those fun little things that you might not in a normal race weekend. Anyway, what is your opinion? Is anyone really in favor of reverse races? Because I would say that that's probably the more unpopular opinion on it, but I'm really interested to see like why people would be, because I'm sure there's some valid reasons out there. I mean, I know that it would be exciting to watch, like I don't disagree with that at all, so I wouldn't mind that. Other Paddock news, Hadjar said, obviously last weekend there were a lot of rumours going around that Isaac Hadjar had been basically signed by Red Bull for next year, and that was sort of something that was more or less confirmed, but Isaac did confirm that he has signed nothing, and he thinks that if there will be talks, it will be at the end of the season after it's all done. And yeah, I definitely do believe that. I don't think Red Bull are in too much of a hurry to make that decision, because they probably don't know themselves what to do. George Russell also wasn't feeling all that well this weekend, which started, or at least we knew about, on media day. He didn't show up basically to media day, and then I think he left the track quite early on the Friday after his free practices. So I think it was some sort of cold or flu. You could definitely hear that in his throat when he was speaking. Why is it that drivers just seem to do so well when they're ill or when they're recovering from an illness or a surgery or something like that? I don't know. Something to look into. Maybe it's because they think, you know, maybe it's something to do with the pressure being off, because like automatically you would think like, oh, if he does bad, at least sort of there's an excuse or reason. Maybe that eases some of the pressure and the nerves. I don't know. Maybe that's dumb. Someone should look into that though. And the Paddock cat. There was a Paddock cat. What did they call him? I think F1 called him Ferrari, like Ferrari. But he was I don't know, was a cute cat. I don't love like when there's stray animals though in the paddock, because like it worries me, because like they're so close to the track and the cars are going so fast. I don't want the cat to get run over. My eyes are proper watering today for some reason. Other Paddock news, Alonso basically said on his future, basically the longer the car will be bad, the longer he'll stay, so he can end on a high. So he said like if the car ends up being good next year and he can end his season on a high and he feels that, then maybe that would be the point that he would choose to retire at. So I don't know what you hope for, really. I feel like that solution is like so complicated for Alonso fans. You want him to stay longer and be in a bad car, or do you want him to have a good season and then know that he'll retire, maybe? And I feel like if he retires, he'll probably retire for real this time. I don't know what you would want there. This weekend was also quite an important weekend for McLaren. They did have the chance to become champions, to win the Constructors' Championship this weekend. Spoiler alert though, they did not. Honestly, the weekend didn't even start off looking too good for Oscar Piastri, and it definitely did not get any better. In FP1, he had a potential engine or gearbox issue. Honestly, I don't know if we figured out what that was in the end, but he did get out and it did get fixed. But his free practices still weren't looking as strong as they could be. Like, I didn't have a good feeling about this weekend from free practices for Oscar Piastri anyway, not for McLaren really in general, I guess. So throughout the session, I know Oscar did get work done on his power unit, but I don't think it would have been up to scratch as he would have wanted it anyway. But even if it was completely fine, obviously Oscar was making some mistakes this weekend, which ended up not really being able to blame anything on the power unit or the gearbox or the engine, whatever the issue was. I can't even remember from FP1. But yeah, not looking good early on. And then what was going on in qualifying? Why was it so messy? There was like 6 red flags, isn't that? Or 7, 6 or 7. I think that's like the record for red flags in a qualifying session, or at least maybe matching the record anyway. Alex was the first DNF. He clipped the inside. Usually you see people more clipping the outside of that turn, but Alex did just turn in too early and end up clipping the wall, and that unfortunately brought his session and therefore his entire qualifying to an end. Hulk also brought out another red flag. He did get going in the end to go back to the pits, but of course he did have big damage and ultimately did not progress into Q2. Yuki-san going strong. Yuki was doing well this weekend. He was having a really good qualifying actually in Q1. I would have liked to see him get a bit higher come the end. See, I'm jumping ahead of myself. We're not even on Q3 yet. But then the end of Q1 obviously brought the yellow flag around like 20 seconds or something to go, which obviously stopped anyone who was doing their laps. There was quite a big hit from Franco Colapinto and a bit of a lockup from Gasly as well, which brought out the yellow and red. So Q1 in the end saw out Albon, Gasly, Ocon, Hulk and Colapinto. And Q2 got more red flags and more touching the wall. Ollie Behrman, one of the first, touched the wall about 11 minutes to go, and that was the end of his session. The timing of some of these meant that some of the drivers just had no times really set. I know Charles had no time after he had a bit of an off as well at Baku. Hamilton did get out for the final lap of Q2, but he did end up boxing. I believe that he didn't make the line in time. See, that sort of stuff happens when there's so many red flags. Things get so twisted and changed that you might even just time getting around, you might not even get around to do the final lap. So obviously that would be very disappointing, and that did lead to Hamilton being out in Q2, even though he was feeling quite positive about this weekend, which unfortunately didn't really show by this point. So we had P15 Behrman, we had Stroll out, we had Bortoleto out, we had Hamilton out, and then we had Alonso out as well. So obviously Hamilton and Alonso probably the bigger surprises there, or maybe a little disappointing for them both. Q3 then saw Charles into the wall, this time bringing out a red flag, and as this was happening, the light rain was starting to come. So obviously very disappointing for Charles to be out. Wasn't even the most dramatic moment of the Q3 session, somehow. One team that was looking good though during this qualifying continued to be Red Bull, with Yuki and Max both on it. Come the end, we had Max, he was first in queue ready to go out, and then we had Oscar, who was completely opposite end of it. He was the last to go out and he went into the wall. I believe that was the 6th red flag, and obviously there weren't a lot of time to go. I think the plan before Oscar crashed was to be able to get 2 laps in, 2 fast laps without, either without a cool down lap or a bit of a faster cool down lap than usual. But that Oscar into the wall in qualifying was a very dramatic moment, obviously, in the title fight, because it's these little mistakes when we're coming down to the last, 7 or something races, and they're both driving their cars so similarly a lot of the time, and the likely the likely outcome of this world championship is that it's going to be down to maybe either luck or just who makes less or more mistakes in the car. And Oscar, I would say, so far in this year has made less mistakes in the McLaren, but this weekend it was not his weekend. And Lando didn't have like a spectacular weekend, but he had a clean weekend and he wasn't making those mistakes, which he needed. I mean, I think he could have done with, it would have been some type of moment if after Oscar crashed out on his own in Q1, if Lando came back and got pole or whatever. But again, the McLaren wasn't really a match for the Red Bull this weekend, and I'd say a lot more pressure on Lando anyway, because he probably knew like everyone was sort of looking and watching him now. That sort of did change by the time of the race though, which we might talk about later. I think that's sort of an interesting point. But before they all went out to set their times, we had Sainz in P1, Lawson in P2, Hadjar P3, and then Verstappen and Norris and Piastri. But I think only the top three potentially had actually set times at this point. But luckily there was enough time to get around and do one final fast lap. It wasn't even Lando's like fastest lap. I think he did brush the wall a bit, and that probably lost him a bit of time, even a bit of confidence, which if you lose that in a qualifying lap such as Baku, you might be taking it a little easier and altogether just have a slower time. But we saw Sainz, Russell, Lawson, Yuki all going faster, and very surprisingly, qualifying ended up with Verstappen on pole with a great run from Max, I have to say. Sainz P2 and Lawson P3. Like, what? And that's still with Norris in it, with Russell in it. I mean, Hadjar as well. My favourite moments in Formula 1 is like when there's randomers just up there for some reason. To see Lawson and Sainz, especially the two teammates who, probably wouldn't realistically be the number one driver on their team this year, both doing better than their teammates in this and doing better in one where they literally finished top three, must be such a confidence boost and definitely well needed. And I really do hope that helps both Carlos and Liam go into the rest of the season with a bit more confidence and a bit more belief, and hopefully bring those results, which I think will be such a benefit to Williams and to RB. And obviously Liam has been improving recently and bringing those results, but before that, Hadjar and Alex, and obviously no hate on the other two, but without a doubt they have been carrying the team more. So now with both drivers sort of at that, and Alex is going to be right up there as well, Hadjar obviously, I think that Williams and Racing Bulls are going to be in for an exciting rest of the season. I mean, you just know that, Aston Martin, Haas, Sauber, they're getting worried looking at how these teams are improving. Antonelli as well, his performance obviously did go a bit more unnoticed because of Sainz and Lawson literally finishing second and third, but Antonelli obviously hasn't had great weekends recently, so him getting P4 and beating Russell as well was definitely a confidence boost for him, and nice to see Tsunoda in his highest finishing position, P6 as well. I feel like this was the qualifying that so many drivers needed just for like their confidence and just to prove that they can do it, on a good weekend. And the end of qualifying did bring us Esteban Ocon getting disqualified for like a rear wing sort of infringement. Where did he actually finish though? I'd say P18, was it? Albon, Gasly, Ocon, 2019-18. It was P18, so not that big of a deal, but obviously you don't want to be getting disqualified. So that's something that Alpine. My mind is gone today. I just had to stop for a minute and was like, wait, it's not called Alpine anymore. What is it called? It is called Alpine. I don't know what's wrong with my brain today, guys. But yeah, Este did get disqualified. Oh, also, Esteban's girlfriend, I'm pretty sure like she's training to be a doctor or something like that. Like she's in med school or whatever, and I just saw that on TikTok someone made a video like making fun of her for carrying her books around the paddock, I think at the last race weekend, being like, oh, so performative, pretending like she's smart, whatever. And she did like clap back at them, which so needed and so deserved, because why are we focusing that much on like the girlfriends in the paddock for carrying a book, or the girlfriends at all? I just feel like that's so cool though, how like you're flying to different countries, yeah. Your boyfriend is a Formula One driver, you're sitting in the paddock, he's doing his stuff racing, and you're just sitting in the Alpine hospitality studying medicine and preparing for exams and stuff like that. I could never. That's on supportive relationships. Grand Prix. Oh, I saw like lots of drama because obviously Oscar DNF'd in qualifying, so he was able to watch the rest of qualifying, and I think Lando fans were getting really annoyed with him that he obviously saw Lando like not really doing a great lap or whatever, and finishing, where did Lando finish? P7, was it? So he sort of had a little smirk, I think, when he saw that Lando finished P7, and he got a lot of hate for that. And I was just like, that's so insane, because yes, they're teammates, okay? But Oscar is obviously feeling a million emotions right now, most of them being anger at himself and sad and panic that maybe he ruined his chance with this one thing of being world champion. Your biggest competitor, like, you're obviously not going to want your biggest competitor to do well. No matter even if you're teammates. That's just, like, it's a sport, you know, they're rivals still. He's not happy about Lando crashing or anything like that. He's happy that Lando didn't get to take full advantage of Oscar making that mistake and messing up, which you would be, you know. I do think it's quite a shame that Lando didn't get to really prove himself in that qualifying session without Oscar there, because all eyes would have been on him. But I do think it's also tough because the car obviously wasn't as competitive as it has been at that track. So it's sort of like making, and you know, the media do seem to love to try and make Lando seem worse and make things seem more in a negative light than they actually are. So there is always a bit of that. But then there was the awful start from Oscar. I don't know how his weekend just went so bad. How did we get here? So he had a bad start. He had a jump start. He stopped, anti-stalled. Obviously lost a bit of time there to get going. Every car went past him. So he was then at the back of the grid. So he got past, you know, turn one, he was at the back of the grid. And then he just locked up, had a big lockup. You could see him turning the steering wheel completely and the car just not turning with him, so he went straight into the wall. A very normal place for that to happen, to lock up, to crash, but for the attention already to be on him because of his bad start. And then while we were talking about him having to make up those places, like the camera flashed to him just in the wall, which is insane. That must have been like a gut-wrenching moment in his hopes for the championship. Now, I still think people are being a bit dramatic about like, oh, that's his championship over. Like, Lando has it now. I mean, I don't think a lot of people are actually saying Lando has it now, because for some reason the belief just isn't in Lando. And honestly, a bit of that from me, because for some reason I just don't. As much as I'd love to see Lando win, I don't know. I'm going to explain what I mean a little later into the episode about that. I'm going to wait until I finish talking about the Grand Prix to actually discuss that sort of point. But yes, Oscar was into the wall. So yeah, Oscar was into the wall. Safety car. So yes, Oscar into the wall then, which brought out a safety car. Again, every time there's a crane on track I say this, but I just don't think, like, there sort of needs to be a red flag, I think, if, especially on a street circuit like that where the crane is like right beside them when they're driving. I know it's under safety car conditions, but I feel like they just shouldn't be driving past the crane at all, because you can still lock up going slow. You could still have, you know, you could still knock into someone else, especially when all the cars have slowed up and it's at the start of the race, so they're even closer as well. I just think that we just need to not do that at all, and like not wait around for another incident to happen before we realise that maybe if there's a crane on the track, especially on a street circuit, like, it's not off all the way after a runoff area, like it's just on the track. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents on that situation. I don't know, maybe it's just like, you know, I think I think some people get it, some people don't get it, and that's okay. But, oh yes, and I did mention Oscar's jump start earlier. He did end up getting a 5-second penalty for that jump start, along with Alonso. So that will, for Oscar, transfer into, I think, a grid place drop next race. I don't know how many. Is it 3 or is that 10 seconds? That's 3-place grid drop. I need a book that has like the rules, like from what I remember, from what usually happens if someone does this, if someone does that, so that I know going into it. What else? At the start also, Ocon had a great save. He was like hit. He should have been in the wall. Most of the drivers would have had that car into the wall. But Ocon, he was hit by Hulk. And he had such a great save, saving that from going into the wall. So I wanted to give Ocon his flowers for that, because I thought that was really impressive. And I didn't really see many people talking about it. I did unfortunately think, like before the race started, I was like, you know, Carlos and Lawson, they're probably not going to make it past turn 1. And not even exactly in the mind that it would be like one of their faults. Although Lawson does have a bit of a reputation to be messy when it comes to that sort of stuff, and with Carlos as well. But they kept it clean and they kept that position, and they were very, very impressive at the start. And it did make their finishing positions even more impressive as well, because it wasn't even luck. There wasn't so many DNFs that they got to keep up high onto the grid. They just had a good race weekend, and I was very happy for both of them, especially to keep that position, those positions even at the start. Yuki also going strong, P5 around lap 7. And then Yuki was also going strong, I think around lap 7 he was still, or up to P5. Franco and Alex had a bit of a touch, so while of course with Williams you can't have both drivers having a good race weekend apparently, so Franco and Alex had a little touch which sent Franco spinning into the wall, and Alex was to blame for that and he to get a 10-second penalty, of course, on Lando's opportunity to like showcase himself and to stand out and to prove his worthiness of a title and him as a title contender. He has another slow pit stop, and I don't blame the pit people because mistakes happen. But guys, we need to get a grip, okay? There's definitely some team talks going on. But look, I know that pit crew, they're going to pull out the fastest and even faster pit stop time of the season to make up for that. Like the McLaren, they've always been a good pit crew. They're always one of the best, and that's so typical though for Lando to have that slow of a pit stop, which obviously put him back behind Yuki. But we did get to see Yuki fight off McLaren and win and succeed fighting off the McLaren, so that was nice. And the battle was going on to the last lap. Lando and Yuki were having a last lap battle, and I know that shouldn't be so much of a surprise because Yuki's in a Red Bull, but out of context, you know, looking at a Red Bull versus McLaren, but you have to look, it's a Yuki versus McLaren. Yuki in a car that he's not completely comfortable driving in, because Yuki is a fantastic driver anyway. And again, Russell finishing on the podium, P2 as well, after being ill that weekend, was just very, very impressive for him, with Sainz as well. A very emotional podium for Williams, and to see the support that Williams were giving him and how happy everyone was for Sainz was very special. And have you seen everything about the unicorn sticker on Sainz's helmet? I think in the cool down room, one of them, maybe Max, asks Carlos about the animal or whatever that's on his sticker, and it is a unicorn. And basically in some of like the fan Q&As or whatever, where fans like asked the Williams drivers to pick like something for them, like, or asked them for advice basically, instead of like asking them questions. I think she asked to name her like a unicorn or something, like sprinkled or sparkled. I don't actually know, I don't think Carlos picked a name, but then she asked if Carlos could wear it on his helmet, and Carlos said yes, like send over a sticker, we'll put it on the helmet. And he did do that, and he got a podium in that. How special must that little girl feel? Like she's going to be a Carlos fan for the entire of her life, and she's had her little unicorn sticker on that, and that's just such a special moment for her. Like, how cute is that? That's definitely one of my favorite things of the year. But yeah, who was our top five? Max, Russell, Sainz. Antonelli just kept quiet. I honestly couldn't really tell you much about his race because I feel like I didn't see any of it shown, which is unfortunate because P4 is obviously a really good result for him, especially given how not great he's been doing recently and how, he's been struggling a little. Obviously, Sonoda keeping Norris behind him and something for Yuki to be proud of. Hamilton getting up there in the top 10 and finishing ahead of Leclerc. I think the Ferraris were told to swap, aren't they? But Hamilton obviously just had a bit more pace than Charles and Hadjar finishing out there. Driver of the day, Sainz as well. Now, another point of like drama and controversy that I've seen in the past 24 hours is a lot of disappointment from Albon fans and a lot of the feeling that it's not fair that Albon has been doing better all season, and of course Carlos is the one to actually get the podium, and for the attention and for that celebration to be on Carlos. And while I get that frustration, it's something that you can't take out on Carlos or Williams in any sort of way. I don't think it takes away from Alex's performance at all. I think it's typical that Alex didn't have a great weekend when the opportunity was there. Whereas when the opportunity isn't there, Alex is always getting the most out of his car. He's always out driving his car to the absolute max and just being an incredible driver. And maybe Carlos hasn't really shown that recently. It is very similar to the Monza win of Lando doing so much better than Daniel in the McLaren. And Daniel really, really struggling, like not doing well at all. And then Daniel ends up getting the win in the McLaren before Lando even got his first win in Formula 1. It is very reminiscent of that sort of situation. But look, Alex's podium in the Williams and a win, hopefully, eventually, in the Williams is going to come. And it's going to be so much more special. And Williams are going to be, I can't even imagine the scenes because it's so deserved for Alex. But, everything just went right for Carlos and he did such an incredible job at driving and he really deserves his flowers for that and the celebration from the team. And, for Alex is only human. It must have hurt to see Carlos getting on the podium when Alex has been so close to doing well, and sometimes it's just been luck that has gotten in the way. But Alex, like the person that he is, did go to the podium to watch Carlos with a big smile on his face and to support him, and looked thrilled in all of the team pictures and everything like that. So, but you do know, he must, part of him must be a little, sick inside, but also, proud of Carlos and happy for Carlos because that is the type of person Alex is. And I really can't wait for Alex to get his moment like that. But I think we could do with just being happy for Carlos right now and letting the team be happy for Carlos and just not turn everything into negativity. Carlos needed that. He got a podium for Williams before, Lewis got a podium for Ferrari, and obviously Ferrari is a much better car, and Carlos actually got fired in replace of Hamilton. So it's important for Carlos too, and Carlos is a great driver, and it's taken him a little time to get used to the Williams and drive it to its full potential, but this could be, again, the confidence boost that he needs. I hope it's not a Daniel situation where some good results, but the rest of the season sort of went, same as the start of the season. I hope Carlos does manage to turn this around. I do think it's interesting, okay, that since Oscar had a bad weekend, the gap has closed a bit. So much more of the talk is now, oh my God, there's actually a chance Max could win the championship. And not Lando, which is so insane. Especially with the media now, all of it is how Max can win the championship, stuff like that. The media do tend to be very harsh on Lando. And that's very, it's clear to see even from an unbiased opinion and stuff like that. But even my mind, when Lando has a lot more chance to win the championship than Max, but now all the talk is on how Max can win it. And even I was guilty of that over the weekend. I was oh my God, for some reason I never even considered Max for in contention. That would be sorry. And I love Oscar and I love Lando, but it would be the funniest thing ever if after all this McLaren drama and who's going to win the championship, Max just came along and won it. It would be so funny. And like heartbreaking for McLaren because they're so sure that one of their drivers is going to get championship, which is so likely. It's still so likely. But honestly, isn't it... I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the statistic is something like if Max wins every race and Oscar, you know, comes at least third with maybe, you know, maybe a few worse ones turned in there, then Max could win. I think the statistic is something like that. Maybe I've got something mixed up there. I'm not good with numbers and everything like that. But that is very, like, if Max and Red Bull are on top of their game now, you know, that also has to mean that if Oscar, even if Max doesn't win and Oscar and Lando start to do a bit worse, like not even top 5, like some territory, it actually doesn't sound too much of a reach that Max could actually win. But maybe the McLaren just hasn't been suited, and I think, and I firmly do believe that one of the McLaren boys will win the championship, and I don't think it's going to be like a 1 point difference or whatever. I think I still do believe that it will be Oscar. I don't even know who I want it to be. I really don't. F2 also, I haven't talked about F2 yet this episode. Alex finished P3 on Saturday, so he did get a podium, but then... And sorry, if you do follow me on TikTok, you know that I always update you on Alex Dunn, like the complete race, just from focusing on Alex Dunn. But I wasn't well on Sunday, so I didn't even get to watch the race. I was too ill. Never mind filming for TikTok. So yeah, unfortunately his race didn't go to plan on Sunday. He got another hit, same as last weekend. And then he did also go off at one point as well. He is still in contention for the championship. I think top 7 potentially are still in contention, and he's maybe 5th, somewhere around there in the championship. I just want him to see him do the best that he can for the remainder races, and you know, while it's unlikely he's going to win the championship now, I also don't think that's the most important thing, because it's not very often that drivers move straight from F2 anyway to F1. Like, I don't even know if Alex is completely ready for F1. But I think that people are watching, and that it will be these last few races that really seal if he will get into Formula 1 at all. I mean, whether he does another season in Formula 2, I don't know. Obviously, he can't if he wins. But maybe he'll move to something else next year, or to be a reserve driver. I mean, I'd be very surprised if there weren't a few teams trying to get him as reserve for next year. He still does have a chance, but I don't think we need to worry, like, if he doesn't win the championship, that's not it, you know. There's some benefits to probably not even winning the championship, but I think obviously he'll just want to really be proving himself in these last few races. The Vanish Gain Brain game, fact or fiction. Let's go back to that, will we? So a driver once won a race crossing the line with all 4 tires of different manufacturers. Is that fact or fiction? Fiction. That didn't happen. Was that obvious? That was probably obvious. I don't know. But maybe you might have had to think about it for a little bit. You just need to tell me what ones you like the most so I can do more of them, you know? Because I do this for you. Like, I'm not answering these. You're answering them. So let me know what ones you like. A bit of a week until Singapore. Singapore Grand Prix actually does give me chills because of what happened at it last year. And also I have my Singapore stickers here that Red Bull gave me when I interviewed with them. A bit rude of them to give me Singapore stickers out of everything, mere weeks after they fired Daniel, but also sweet of them to give me anything at all. So I think tomorrow, Tuesday, is a year since Daniel got fired, or since Daniel's last race, at least since he last left the paddock. Unless he left after midnight, which I think he did, then it would be the 23rd. So just spare thought this weekend for your Danny Rick girly, me, and yourselves if you are a Danny Rick for lifer. But that is it from me until Singapore. So I'll see you in 2 weeks' time. Bye.